Captain Marcus Chen stared at the screen in his quarters aboard the TDS Ranger. The message had come through encrypted channels, bouncing across relay stations for 3 weeks before reaching Earth's outer defense grid. It was not the kind of message humanity expected to receive. The face on the screen belonged to someone clearly not human. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her eyes were larger than any human's, with silver pupils that seemed to catch light in impossible ways. When she spoke, the translation software worked hard to convert her words into something Marcus could understand. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zalarian Empire," the message began. "We are the first alien species to make contact with your people. We need your help. Our royal family is dying, and without them, our entire civilization will fall." Marcus replayed the message 3 times. Each time the same impossible truth hit him. Humanity was not alone in the universe. And somehow, these aliens needed their help. The message continued with details that made Marcus's military training kick into high gear. The Zalarian Empire controlled over 1,000 star systems. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. But they had one weakness that was killing them from the inside. The royal family possessed something called neural patterns. These patterns were not just important for ceremony or tradition. They were the biological keys that controlled the Empire's entire defensive network. Every shield generator, every automated defense system, every protective barrier around their worlds responded only to the specific brainwaves of the royal bloodline. For thousands of years, this system had worked perfectly. The royal family had many members, and the neural patterns passed from parent to child without fail. But now, something was attacking them at the genetic level. "We call it the silent death," Ambassador Veltar explained in the message. "It looks like a natural disease, but our scientists believe it was created by rebel groups within our own empire. The silent death targets the specific genes that create our royal neural patterns. Within months, anyone carrying the royal bloodline begins to lose their connection to our defense systems." Marcus felt his stomach tighten as the ambassador continued. "Emperor Zaltharon still lives, but he grows weaker each day. His daughter, Princess Lyra Lai, shows the first signs of the disease. She is the last hope for our bloodline. If she dies, our defense grid will shut down permanently. A dozen different enemy factions are already moving toward our borders. They know what is happening to us." The technical details that followed made Marcus realize why the Zalarians had contacted Earth. Their highly advanced society operated on strict protocols and procedures. When faced with the silent death, their scientists followed the same research methods they had used for centuries. But the disease seemed designed to counter every traditional approach they tried. "We have studied your species from a distance," the ambassador said. "Your people think differently than ours. You improvise. You find solutions that should not work but somehow do. We believe that human creativity might be the key to saving our royal line." Marcus paused the message and walked to his window. Outside, Earth's blue ocean sparkled in the sunlight. Humanity had just learned they were not alone, and already they were being asked to save an entire alien civilization. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than anything he had carried in 20 years of military service. The message resumed with coordinates and technical specifications. The Zalarian homeworld was deep in space, far beyond the reach of normal human ships. The journey would require modifications to existing human technology that had never been tested. Even if Marcus could reach their world, extracting members of the royal family during what sounded like a civil war would be nearly impossible. "We cannot send our own rescue ships," Ambassador Veltar explained. "The rebel factions have infiltrated our military. Any Zalarian vessel attempting to reach the royal family would be destroyed before it could land. But a human ship would be something they do not expect. Your technology is primitive by our standards, but that might be exactly what we need." The message ended with a personal appeal that surprised Marcus. "Captain Chen, we have monitored your service record. You have led rescue missions in impossible situations. You have saved lives when others said it could not be done. We are not asking you to save just 2 people. We are asking you to save the future of our entire species." Marcus sat in silence for a long time after the message ended. Earth's governments would need weeks to debate this situation. Diplomatic committees would form. Scientists would demand proof. Politicians would argue about the risks and benefits of getting involved in an alien civil war. But Marcus knew that time was something the Zalarian royal family did not have. Every day they waited was another day closer to the collapse of their civilization. And once that happened, the refugee crisis would eventually reach Earth's doorstep anyway. He looked at the technical specifications again. The modifications to his ship would be extreme, but not impossible. His crew was small but experienced. They had worked together long enough to trust each other completely. If anyone could pull off an impossible rescue mission in deep space, it would be them. Marcus opened a secure communication channel to Earth Command. His message was brief and direct. Request permission to volunteer for deep space rescue mission. Details classified until approval granted. Time is critical. Please respond immediately. He knew the answer would probably be no. Earth's military leaders were cautious by nature. They would want to study the situation, gather more intelligence, and plan every detail before committing resources. But Marcus also knew that sometimes the right thing to do was not the safe thing to do. As he waited for a response, Marcus began running calculations in his head. Fuel requirements, life support modifications, weapon upgrades. His ship was not designed for this kind of mission, but with the right changes it might just work. The communication panel beeped with an incoming message. Marcus opened it, expecting to see orders to stand down and wait for official diplomatic contact. Instead, he found a simple two-word response from Admiral Hayes. Mission approved. Below that was a longer message explaining that Earth's leadership had been monitoring the Zolarian situation for several days. Intelligence satellites had detected massive military movements in deep space. Whatever was happening out there was big enough to potentially affect Earth's safety in the future. Bring them home, Captain, the Admiral's message concluded, and try not to start an interstellar war while you're out there. Marcus smiled for the first time in hours. He had his mission. Now he just had to figure out how to save an alien royal family from their own people, using human technology that was thousands of years behind theirs, while traveling to a world he had never seen. He looked out the window at Earth one more time. If this mission failed, it might be the last time he saw his home planet. But if it succeeded, humanity would have its first alien allies. The risk seemed worth taking. Marcus activated his ship's intercom system. All crew report to stations immediately. We have a rescue mission that's going to test everything we think we know about what's possible. As his crew began preparing for the impossible, Marcus felt the familiar weight of command settle on his shoulders. He had led difficult missions before, but none quite like this one. He was about to become humanity's first ambassador to an alien species, whether he wanted the job or not. Captain Marcus Chen stared at the screen in his quarters aboard the TDS Ranger. The message had come through encrypted channels, bouncing across relay stations for 3 weeks before reaching Earth's outer defense grid. It was not the kind of message humanity expected to receive. The face on the screen belonged to someone clearly not human. Her skin had a pale blue tint, and her eyes were larger than any human's, with silver pupils that seemed to catch light in impossible ways. When she spoke, the translation software worked hard to convert her words into something Marcus could understand. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zolarian Empire, the message began. We are the first alien species to make contact with your people. We need your help. Our royal family is dying, and without them, our entire civilization will fall. Marcus replayed the message 3 times. Each time the same impossible truth hit him. Humanity was not alone in the universe. And somehow, these aliens needed their help. The message continued with details that made Marcus's military training kick into high gear. The Zolarian Empire controlled over 1,000 star systems. Their technology was far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. But they had one weakness that was killing them from the inside. The royal family possessed something called neural patterns. These patterns were not just important for ceremony or tradition. They were the biological keys that controlled the Empire's entire defensive network. Every shield generator, every automated defense system, every protective barrier around their worlds responded only to the specific brainwaves of the royal bloodline. For thousands of years, this system had worked perfectly. The royal family had many members, and the neural patterns passed from parent to child without fail. But now, something was attacking them at the genetic level. We call it the silent death, Ambassador Veltar explained in the message. It looks like a natural disease, but our scientists believe it was. The crystalline spires of Zolaria Prime rose from the planet's surface like frozen lightning. Each tower stretched kilometers into the atmosphere, their surfaces reflecting the light of twin suns in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Marcus had studied images of the Zalarian homeworld during his 3-week journey, but seeing it in person was overwhelming. His modified ship, now running on a hybrid of human and Zalarian technology, slipped through the planet's outer defense grid without detection. The Zalarians had been right about one thing. Their enemies were not expecting a primitive human vessel to appear in their most heavily guarded space. But as Marcus descended toward the planet's surface, he could see that the civil war was much worse than the ambassador's message had suggested. Entire sections of the crystal cities were dark, their power systems destroyed by fighting. Smoke rose from dozens of locations where battles still raged. The beautiful spires that should have gleamed in the sunlight were scarred by weapon impacts and explosions. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from all over the planet," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Knox. "It looks like every faction down there has weapons we can't even identify." Marcus nodded, keeping his attention on the navigation display. His ship's sensors were having trouble making sense of Zalarian technology, but the basic patterns of war were the same everywhere. He could see the choke points where different groups were fighting for control. He could identify the safe corridors where civilians were trying to escape the violence. The royal family was trapped in the central spire, the tallest of all the crystal towers. According to the intelligence data the Zalarians had provided, the spire's defensive systems were still partially functional. But without the Emperor's full neural connection, those defenses were failing a little more each day. Marcus brought his ship down in what had once been a commercial district. The crystal buildings here were smaller, and many of them were already damaged enough to provide cover. As he powered down his engines, explosions lit up the sky several kilometers away. The war was getting closer to the royal family's location. He checked his equipment one more time. The environmental suit would protect him from Zalaria Prime's atmosphere, which was close enough to Earth's air that humans could breathe it, but contained trace elements that would be toxic over time. His weapons were standard human military gear, primitive by Zalarian standards, but hopefully unexpected enough to be effective. The most important piece of equipment was the neural interface device the Zalarians had provided. It was supposed to let him communicate directly with the royal family's enhanced brain patterns. Marcus was not entirely sure how it worked, but the Zalarian scientists had assured him it would function with human neural chemistry. As he left his ship and stepped onto the crystal streets of Zalaria Prime, Marcus immediately understood why the royal family was trapped. The city was a maze of interconnected structures that rose and fell in 3 dimensions. Streets existed at multiple levels, connected by transit systems that no longer functioned. A person could easily get lost for days trying to navigate from one spire to another. But Marcus had spent years studying urban warfare, and the basic principles applied even in an alien crystal city. He looked for patterns in the architecture, identified defensive positions, and planned a route that would keep him away from the major battle zones. The first sign of real trouble came when he was halfway to the central spire. A group of Zalarian rebels, their skin marked with bioluminescent tattoos that identified their faction, spotted him moving through the ruins of what looked like a shopping complex. They shouted something in their own language and raised weapons that hummed with energy. Marcus dove behind a crystal pillar as bolts of superheated plasma melted the ground where he had been standing. This was the moment when human military training met alien technology, and Marcus discovered that being primitive sometimes meant being unpredictable. The Zalarian rebels were used to fighting enemies who used energy shields and plasma weapons. They were not prepared for someone who fought with kinetic projectiles and explosive charges. Marcus rolled out from behind cover and fired 3 quick shots from his assault rifle. The bullets punched through the rebels' energy shields as if they were not there. Zalarian defensive technology was designed to stop energy weapons, not solid projectiles moving at high velocity. 2 of the rebels went down immediately. The third tried to adjust his weapon's settings, but Marcus was already moving. He tossed a fragmentation grenade into the group and sprinted toward the next level of cover. The explosion echoed through the crystal chambers like thunder. As he continued toward the central spire, Marcus realized that his human approach to combat was more effective than he had expected. Zalarian military tactics seemed to rely heavily on advanced technology and predetermined strategies. When faced with improvised human methods, their responses were slow and confused. But the closer he got to the royal family's location, the more dangerous the situation became. Different rebel factions were fighting each other as well as the remaining loyal forces. Energy weapons created a constant light show in the sky. The ground shook with explosions that sometimes brought down entire sections of crystal architecture. Marcus was climbing through the ruins of a collapsed transit station when he first heard the Imperial distress signal. It was being transmitted on the frequency the ambassador had given him, but it was weak and broken by interference. Someone in the central spire was still alive and trying to call for help. He activated the neural interface device and immediately felt a strange sensation, as if someone was trying to speak directly into his mind. The communication was not in words, but in concepts and emotions that his brain had to work hard to interpret. Fear, desperation, hope when the unknown presence of Marcus's human mind touched the Zalarian consciousness. And underneath it all, the terrible weakness of a neural pattern that was slowly dying. Marcus realized he was sensing Emperor Zaltharon's mind directly. The Zalarian ruler was still alive, but barely. His neural connection to the city's defense systems was failing, and the effort of maintaining even partial control was killing him faster than the disease already was. Through the mental link, Marcus received images and impressions that showed him the layout of the central spire's interior. The Emperor and his daughter were trapped in the royal chambers near the top of the tower. Rebel forces controlled most of the lower levels, and they were slowly fighting their way upward. But the Emperor also shared something else through the neural connection. Princess Lyrelei was worse than the ambassador's message had indicated. The silent death was progressing faster in her than in her father. She had perhaps days before her neural patterns collapsed completely. Marcus broke the mental connection and looked up at the central spire. It rose more than 2 kilometers above his current position, its surface covered with defensive systems that were sparking and failing as their neural control weakened. Getting inside would require climbing through an active war zone while the building's own defenses randomly activated and shut down. He studied the tower's structure and began to see possibilities that the Zalarians had probably missed. The crystal architecture was beautiful, but it had weak points that could be exploited by someone thinking like a human rather than an alien. The transit tubes that ran up the tower's exterior were designed for Zalarian technology, but they might support human equipment if used differently than intended. Marcus gathered his remaining equipment and began the ascent. Behind him, explosions continued to light up the alien city. Ahead of him, somewhere in the upper levels of the failing tower, 2 members of an alien royal family waited for a rescue they probably did not believe was possible. As he climbed toward the royal chambers, Marcus reflected on how strange his life had become. 3 weeks ago, he had been a simple military captain dealing with routine patrol missions. Now he was scaling an alien tower in the middle of an interstellar civil war, carrying the future of an entire civilization on his shoulders. But that was what humans did, he thought. They adapted. They improvised. They found ways to succeed even when the odds said it was impossible. The princess and her father were waiting for him. Marcus intended to bring them home. The royal chambers at the top of the central spire were nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of throne rooms and golden decorations, he found a medical facility that looked more like a high-tech hospital than a palace. Crystal walls pulsed with soft light, and the air hummed with the energy of machines he could not identify. Emperor Zaltharon lay on a platform in the center of the largest chamber. His blue-tinted skin had faded to an unhealthy gray, and the silver in his eyes flickered like dying stars. When he saw Marcus enter, the Emperor tried to sit up but could barely lift his head. "Human," the Emperor whispered, his voice translated by the neural interface device. "You came." I did not believe it was possible. Princess Lyrelei stood beside her father's medical platform. She was younger than Marcus had expected, probably equivalent to a human in her early 20s. Her skin still held some of its natural blue color, but dark veins were visible beneath the surface, spreading up her neck toward her brain. The silent death was consuming her from the inside. "Father, save your strength," she said, placing a hand on the Emperor's arm. When she looked at Marcus, her silver eyes held a mixture of hope and despair. "Captain Chen, you should not have come. This disease will kill us both within days. You cannot save what is already lost." Marcus activated his medical scanner and began taking readings of both Zolarians. The device had been modified with Zolarian technology, allowing it to analyze alien biology in ways no human instrument had ever attempted. What he saw in the data made him understand why Zolarian science had failed to find a cure. The silent death was not attacking their bodies in any conventional sense. Instead, it was targeting the specific neural pathways that created the royal family's unique brain patterns. It worked like a virus, but at the quantum level, disrupting the electromagnetic fields that their brains generated. "Your scientists have been trying to cure a disease," Marcus said, studying the scanner readings. "But this is not really a disease. It is a form of electromagnetic warfare designed to look like a biological problem." Princess Lyrelei moved closer to Marcus, her eyes widening with interest. "What do you mean?" Marcus showed her the scanner display. "The silent death creates quantum interference patterns that disrupt your neural fields. Your people have been looking for biological solutions, but you need to approach this like an engineering problem." He spent the next several hours running every test his modified medical equipment could perform. The Emperor grew weaker as the day progressed, but Princess Lyrelei helped Marcus understand the technical details of how royal neural patterns worked. What Marcus learned changed everything he thought he knew about the Zolarian Empire. The royal family's ability to control their defense systems was not just a matter of genetics. It was a form of biological quantum computing that had been engineered into their bloodline thousands of years ago. "Our ancestors created this ability to protect our people," Princess Lyrelei explained, "but they also made it our greatest weakness. If the royal line fails, our entire civilization loses its ability to defend itself." Marcus began to see patterns in the data that Zolarian scientists had missed. Humans had one advantage over the highly advanced Zolarians. Human brains were naturally resistant to quantum interference. The same primitive neural structure that made humans seem backward compared to Zolarian intelligence also made them immune to the silent death. "I think I can create a treatment," Marcus said carefully, "but it will require combining human biochemistry with Zolarian neural engineering." "The risk is enormous," the Emperor raised his head slightly. "Explain." Marcus pulled up his analysis on the scanner display. Human neural patterns generate a type of electromagnetic static that disrupts quantum interference. If I can temporarily alter Princess Lyrelei's brain chemistry to mimic human neural activity, it might reset her quantum patterns and stop the silent death. Princess Lyrelei stared at the data for a long time. "You are suggesting that I become partially human?" "Temporarily," Marcus emphasized. "The treatment would last only long enough to break the interference pattern. After that, your natural Zolarian neural patterns should reassert themselves." The Emperor struggled to speak. "The risk of permanent damage?" Marcus was honest. "I do not know. This has never been attempted before. But without treatment, the princess will definitely die within days. With treatment, she has a chance." They worked through the night preparing the treatment using a combination of human medical supplies and Zolarian bioengineering equipment. Marcus had to adapt human biochemical processes to work with alien physiology, while Princess Lyrelei helped him understand the quantum mechanics of royal neural patterns. As dawn broke over the Crystal City, explosions began shaking the central spire more violently. The rebel forces had broken through the lower defenses and were fighting their way upward. They had perhaps hours before the royal chambers would be overrun. "We must try the treatment now," Princess Lyrelei said. "If we wait longer, it will not matter whether it works or not." Marcus prepared the injection with hands that he forced to remain steady. The combination of human neural transmitters and Zolarian quantum stabilizers looked innocent enough, but he knew it could either save the princess or kill her immediately. Emperor Zaltharon watched from his medical platform as Marcus administered the treatment. "If this works," the Emperor said quietly, "humanity will have saved our entire species. We will not forget such a debt." The treatment began working within minutes. Princess Lyrelei's vital signs spiked as her brain chemistry shifted toward a more human-like pattern. The dark veins under her skin began to fade, and the silver in her eyes grew brighter. But the effort was too much for Emperor Zaltharon. As his daughter's neural patterns stabilized, his own connection to the city's defense systems finally collapsed completely. Alarms began sounding throughout the spire as protective barriers failed and automated defenses shut down. The Emperor smiled as he felt his daughter's mind touch his one last time through their shared neural link. She lives, he whispered. The bloodline continues. Emperor Zaltharon died peacefully, his hand still holding his daughter's as the treatment completed its work. Princess Lyrelai became Queen Lyrelai in that moment, the last living member of the royal family and the sole hope for the Zalarian Empire's survival. The new queen stood slowly, testing her renewed strength. The treatment had worked, but Marcus could see that she was fundamentally changed. Her neural patterns were stable, but they carried traces of human electromagnetic signatures. She was still Zalarian, but she was also something new. The rebels will be here soon, Queen Lyrelai said, her voice now carrying the authority of absolute command. We must leave immediately. Marcus gathered his equipment while the queen performed some kind of ritual over her father's body. When she finished, the Emperor's form dissolved into sparkling energy that merged with the crystal walls of the chamber. Even in death, he became part of the spire that had been his home. He is one with the city now, Queen Lyrelai explained. It is our way. As they prepared to escape the central spire, Marcus reflected on what they had accomplished. He had saved the Zalarian royal bloodline, but at a cost that would change both species forever. The treatment that saved the queen had created a permanent link between human and Zalarian neural patterns. Queen Lyrelai was no longer entirely Zalarian, and through their shared experience, Marcus was no longer entirely human either. They had become something new, something that represented the future of both their species. Now they just had to survive long enough to find out what that future would look like. Marcus's decision changed everything. Instead of choosing between Earth and the Zalarian Empire, he proposed something that neither side had considered. He would accept Queen Lyrelai's claim, but only if the arrangement included establishing a permanent human embassy within the royal household and a reciprocal Zalarian embassy on Earth. The negotiations took weeks, but the final agreement created something unprecedented in galactic history. Marcus would become the first dual citizen, belonging to both species while serving as a permanent ambassador between them. His transformation from military captain to interstellar diplomat happened faster than anyone thought possible. The ritual bonding ceremony took place in the crystal chambers beneath the royal palace on Veltar Prime. Marcus had expected something like a wedding or a military induction, but Zalarian bonding was unlike anything in human experience. Queen Lyrelai led him through passages carved from living crystal that pulsed with biological light. The walls were covered with neural pathways that connected to the planet's central nervous system. Every Zalarian world was partially alive, Marcus had learned, with crystalline structures that could think and feel in ways humans were only beginning to understand. The bonding will make our neural connection permanent, Queen Lyrelai explained as they walked deeper into the chambers, but it will also give you access to the Imperial network. You will be able to communicate with any part of our empire instantly, and you will understand our technology as if you had been born to it. Marcus felt nervous in ways that his military training had never prepared him for. The neural modifications would be irreversible. Once the bonding was complete, he would no longer be entirely human, just as the queen was no longer entirely Zalarian after her treatment. The central chamber contained what looked like a pool of liquid crystal, surrounded by complex machinery. The crystal glowed with soft blue light that reminded Marcus of the queen's natural skin tone. As they approached, the light grew brighter, responding to their presence. "Are you certain about this?" Queen Lyrelai asked. Through their existing mental link, Marcus could feel her concern mixed with anticipation. "Once we complete the bonding, there will be no way to undo it." Marcus nodded. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." The bonding process was unlike anything Marcus could have imagined. As he stepped into the liquid crystal, he felt it merge with his nervous system at the cellular level. His consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of his own mind, connecting first with Queen Lyrelai's thoughts, then with the vast network of minds that made up the Zalarian Empire. For a moment, Marcus experienced what it meant to be part of a truly galactic civilization. He could sense the thoughts and emotions of billions of Zalarians across thousands of worlds. He felt the pulse of interstellar commerce, the rhythm of scientific discovery, and the deep satisfaction of a species that had found harmony with its technology. But he also felt something that surprised the Zalarians. Through Marcus's human perspective, they experienced emotions and thought patterns that were completely foreign to their species. Human creativity, Stubbornness and individual determination flowed through the network like a new kind of energy. When the bonding was complete, Marcus emerged from the crystal pool fundamentally changed. His eyes now carried flecks of silver like Queen Lyraleigh's, and his neural patterns had been permanently altered to interface with Zellarian technology. But unlike the Queen, who had retained her essential Zellarian nature, Marcus had become something truly hybrid. The changes became apparent immediately. Marcus could now control Zellarian technology through thought alone. When he placed his hand on a crystal control panel, the entire royal palace responded to his commands. But more importantly, he could translate between human and Zellarian thought patterns in real time. Queen Lyraleigh stared at him with amazement. "You are not just bonded to our network," she said. "You have become a bridge between our species' ways of thinking." The political implications became clear over the following months. With Marcus as an intermediary, humans and Zellarians began collaborating on projects that neither species could have accomplished alone. Human creativity combined with Zellarian technology produced innovations that surprised everyone. Earth's first interstellar colony ships were built using hybrid human-Zellarian designs that were more efficient than anything either species had created independently. Zellarian scientists working with human researchers developed new approaches to quantum physics that revolutionized their understanding of the universe. But the most significant change was in how the two species viewed each other. Through Marcus's dual perspective, humans began to understand that advanced technology did not necessarily mean superior wisdom. Zellarians learned that primitive could sometimes mean flexible and innovative rather than simply backward. Marcus found himself at the center of a cultural exchange that went far beyond simple diplomacy. He was living proof that different species could not only coexist, but could actually enhance each other's capabilities through cooperation. The Zellarian Council voted to grant humanity status as a junior partner in the Empire, with full access to Zellarian trade networks and defensive alliances. Earth's governments, initially suspicious of such close alien contact, gradually came to see the benefits of the arrangement. Admiral Hayes visited the royal palace 6 months after the bonding ceremony. Marcus had not seen his former commander since leaving Earth, and he was curious about how much he had changed in the Admiral's eyes. "You look different, Captain," Admiral Hayes said during their private meeting. "Not just the eyes. You carry yourself differently now." Marcus smiled. "I feel different. The neural modifications have changed how I think about everything. I can see patterns and connections that were invisible to me before." "Do you regret your decision?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "No. But I understand now that this was not really a choice between staying human or becoming alien. It was a choice between remaining the same or becoming something new." Queen Lyraleigh joined them for dinner that evening, and Admiral Hayes had the opportunity to see the partnership that Marcus and the Queen had developed. They communicated as much through their neural link as through spoken words, finishing each other's thoughts and responding to emotions that neither Admiral Hayes nor the human translation devices could detect. "You have created something unprecedented," Admiral Hayes told them. "Other species will study your bonding for centuries, trying to understand how two different forms of consciousness can merge so completely." After the Admiral returned to Earth, Marcus and Queen Lyraleigh stood together on the palace balcony, looking up at the stars. Earth was visible as a tiny blue dot in the constellation that humans called Orion. It seemed impossible that such a small point of light could be home to an entire species. "Do you miss it?" Queen Lyraleigh asked. Marcus felt the question through their neural link as well as hearing it with his ears. She was not just asking about Earth, but about his human identity and everything he had given up to become what he now was. "I miss some things," Marcus admitted, "but I would not trade what we have built together for anything I left behind." Through their shared consciousness, Marcus could sense the Queen's deep satisfaction. The bonding had given her not just a political ally, but a true partner who understood both her responsibilities and her desires. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. Queen Lyraleigh smiled, and through their neural link, Marcus felt her excitement about the future. "Now we build something that has never existed before, a civilization that combines the best of both our species." As they watched, a Zellarian transport ship departed from the palace spaceport, carrying the latest group of human scientists and engineers to collaborative research stations throughout the Empire. At the same time, Marcus knew Solarian teachers and technicians were working on Earth, sharing their knowledge with human students. The rescue mission that had brought them together had grown into something far larger than either of them had imagined. Marcus had saved the royal bloodline, but in the process he had helped create a new form of interstellar civilization. Standing beside his queen and partner, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed. He had started as a simple military officer following orders. Now he was helping to write the future of two species. The neural bond between them pulsed with shared contentment as they watched their ships carry the seeds of cooperation to stars that neither humans nor Zellarians would have reached alone. Marcus had found his purpose, and it was larger than anything he could have imagined when he first received that desperate message from an alien ambassador. He was no longer just human, and Queen Lirelei was no longer just Zellarian. Together they had become something new, something that represented the future of galactic civilization itself. The stars seemed brighter that night, full of possibilities that would have been impossible for either species to achieve alone. The coronation of Queen Lirelei took place 3 months after Marcus brought her safely back to the Zellarian core worlds. The Civil War had ended quickly once the royal neural patterns were restored, and the Empire's defense systems came back online. Rebel factions found themselves facing automated defenses that could not be hacked or disabled, and most surrendered rather than face annihilation. Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the ceremonial plaza, watching thousands of Zellarians gather for the historic event. The plaza was built into the side of a crystal mountain on Veltar Prime, the Empire's ceremonial capital. Every surface reflected and amplified light in patterns that created a natural amphitheater visible from orbit. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, medical examinations, and cultural exchanges. Earth's governments had finally established formal contact with the Zellarian Empire, and both species were working to understand each other's technology and society. Marcus had become something of a celebrity on both sides. Humans called him the first interstellar hero. Zellarians referred to him as the catalyst, the one who had changed the course of their history. But Marcus was more interested in the scientific discoveries that continued to emerge from his rescue mission. The treatment that had saved Queen Lirelei had created unexpected side effects. Her neural patterns were now partially compatible with human technology, allowing her to interface directly with Earth's computer systems. In return, Marcus found that he could sense Zellarian quantum fields in ways that no other human could. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's leading xenobiologist, had spent weeks studying the changes in both Marcus and the Queen. "You have created the first true hybrid consciousness," she had explained. "Not physically hybrid, but neurologically compatible in ways we never thought possible." The implications were staggering. If the neural compatibility could be replicated safely, it would allow unprecedented cooperation between the two species. But it also raised questions about identity and belonging that neither side was fully prepared to address. Queen Lirelei appeared on the ceremonial platform wearing robes that seemed to be made of crystallized light. When she spoke, her words were translated and broadcast to every world in the Empire. Her first act as queen was to formally thank humanity for saving her people. "Captain Marcus Chen of Earth risked everything to preserve our civilization," she announced to the gathered crowd. "Without his courage and ingenuity, the royal bloodline would have ended, and our empire would have fallen to chaos." The crowd's response was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Thousands of Zellarian voices created harmonics that resonated through the crystal architecture, building into a sound that felt like music, made of pure emotion. It was their way of expressing gratitude that went beyond simple words. But Queen Lirelei was not finished. Her next announcement would send shockwaves through both human and Zellarian society. "The bond between Captain Chen and myself goes deeper than simple alliance," the Queen continued. "The treatment that saved my life has created a permanent neural connection between us. Our minds are linked in ways that transcend species boundaries." Marcus felt a flutter of surprise through their shared mental connection. The Queen had not discussed this announcement with him beforehand. He could sense her determination in something else, something that felt like affection mixed with political calculation. "Therefore," Queen Lirelei declared, "according to the ancient laws of our empire, I claim Captain Marcus Chen as a member of the royal household. He is no longer merely an ally or honored guest. He is ours, bound to our people and our fate. The plaza erupted in surprised murmurs that grew into excited celebration, but Marcus felt his stomach drop as he began to understand the implications of what the Queen had just announced. Through their neural link, he sensed her thoughts. The claim was not just ceremonial. Under Zalarian law, her declaration made him a permanent resident of the Empire with status equivalent to a royal family member. It also meant he could not leave Zalarian space without the Queen's permission. Ambassador Veltar, who had been standing near Marcus, moved closer with an expression of amazement. "Captain, do you understand what just happened?" "The Queen has invoked the right of claiming. It has not been used in over 1,000 years." Marcus watched as Earth's diplomatic delegation went into emergency session. He could see them frantically consulting their datapads, trying to understand the legal implications of the Queen's announcement. Earth had no precedent for one of its citizens being claimed by an alien royal family. Queen Lorelei continued her coronation speech, but Marcus was only half listening. Through their mental connection, he could feel her complex motivations. She genuinely cared for him, but the claim was also a calculated political move. Having a human permanently attached to the royal household would cement the alliance between their species. "The catalyst will serve as our bridge to humanity," the Queen announced. "Through him, our peoples will learn to understand each other as never before. He will be given access to our most advanced technologies and the deepest secrets of our civilization." The crowd's approval was overwhelming, but Marcus could see the Earth delegation becoming increasingly agitated. Ambassador Sarah Mitchell was speaking rapidly into her communication device, probably requesting emergency instructions from Earth Command. After the ceremony, Marcus found himself in the position of being congratulated by Zalarian nobility, while human diplomats demanded private meetings to discuss his legal status. The situation was unprecedented in human history. Queen Lorelei approached him as the crowds began to disperse. In person, she looked younger and more uncertain than she had during the public ceremony. "I know you are surprised by my announcement," she said through their mental link rather than speaking aloud. But it was necessary. Marcus studied her face, trying to read expressions that were still alien to him despite their neural connection. "You could have discussed this with me first. Would you have agreed?" she asked, and Marcus realized she had a point. The idea of permanently joining an alien royal family would have seemed impossible to consider rationally. "The neural bond between us is real," Queen Lorelei continued. "It grows stronger every day. Eventually, separation would become painful for both of us. The claiming simply recognizes what already exists." Ambassador Mitchell approached them with barely controlled frustration. "Captain Chen, we need to discuss the legal implications of this situation immediately. Earth has sovereignty over its citizens regardless of alien customs." Queen Lorelei turned to face the human ambassador, and Marcus felt a flash of protective instinct through their mental link. "Ambassador Mitchell, Captain Chen is free to make his own choice. But he should understand that the neural bond we share is not something that can be simply ignored or set aside." The political complications were becoming clear to Marcus. Earth wanted him to return home as a hero and source of information about Zalarian technology. The Zalarian Empire wanted him to stay as a symbol of their alliance and a bridge between species. And caught in the middle was the growing neural connection that made separation from Queen Lorelei increasingly difficult. That night, alone in his quarters in the royal palace, Marcus tried to think through his options. He could insist on returning to Earth, but that would strain the new alliance and cause him personal pain as the neural bond stretched across interstellar distances. He could accept the Queen's claim and essentially become an exile from his own species, or he could try to find a third option that satisfied everyone's needs. Through the neural link, he felt Queen Lyrelei's presence in his mind. She was not trying to influence his decision, but he could sense her hope and fear mixing together as she waited for his choice. Marcus realized that his decision would affect more than just his own life. It would set the precedent for how humans and Zalarians related to each other for generations to come. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming. But as he had learned during the rescue mission, sometimes the right choice was not the safe choice. Sometimes you had to risk everything to create something new and better. Marcus opened his communication device and sent a message to both Earth Command and the Zalarian Council. His decision would surprise everyone, But it was the only path he could see that honored both his human heritage and his new responsibilities to the Empire. The future of human-Zalarian relations was about to take another unexpected turn.